We are back. It is Seth Keller at FFD at Home Dad joining you today for the rapid fire week 6 rundown. It starts right now on the Fantasy Facts presented by the one and only Fantasy Data. We are jumping straight into it today. We have a whole lot to jump into, and it's been a busy week. Pat and I didn't get to do our usual Fantasy Facts show this week because we had a little bit of sicknesses running through the house. It happens around this time of year. If you have kids in school, you know our plight. But what's happening right now, week 6 rundown. I got all my data coming from fantasydata.com. Check it out. Check out bettingdata.com as well. That's where all the betting lines and everything are coming from. If you use the promo code FAQS, that's FAQS at fantasydata.com, you'll get yourself a discount, 20% discount off your subscription, which is all worth it, especially if you're checking out any of the advanced metrics. It's totally a great option for anybody that is a diehard fantasy football player, fan, content creator, anything like that. So, jumping straight into it, Thursday night kicks us off with honestly a letdown of a game. Let's call it what it is. We have the Washington Commanders traveling to the Chicago Bears. It is not only the far and away consensus over under lowest point total at now 38. It was 38 and a half yesterday. Probably some more money just hammering the under in that game. And honestly, I think they're still not quite at what that under is going to be, unless we just see some real slop in terms of offense and defense out there. I don't see this game hitting the over, which is in line with the fantasy projections as well. Both of these teams are projected to be two of the lowest fantasy scoring teams out there. And as a game, they are the lowest projected total. So who are you starting in this game? I mean, honestly, nobody with much confidence. You might throw Carson Wentz out there, but he's been dealing with a shoulder injury, so you kind of want to figure out what the latest news is on him. Terry McLaurin, you're probably going to play him, because especially if you're in a 3 wide receiver, 2 flex type of league. You're probably going to play him because you drafted him high enough, and he does just enough to kind of stay out there. I am not starting Brian Robinson. I am not starting Antonio Gibson. Maybe Curtis Samuel, full PPR, possibly. But I don't like any of them out there. Yes, Brian Robinson led the backfield, but he led the backfield with very few touches this past week. I am not excited about getting him into a lineup. Obviously, there is desperation out there. I should have let off with the teams on bye. You have guys like Derrick Henry on the Titans that's on bye. You have the Lions running back, both Swift and Jamal Williams on bye. You have the Raiders with running back Josh Jacobs on bye. And you have the Texans with running back Dameon Pierce all on bye this week. So, yes, I get it. You may be in a difficult position, but I really do not like Brian Robinson or Antonio Gibson as options unless you are just absolutely desperate at that running back position. Same thing with JD McKissick. I really just do not like this backfield at all, especially against the Bears defense that has been pretty solid. They have been weak against the run, but they've also played a lot of really good running backs. So it's hard to say whether or not they are weak against the run or weak against guys like Dalvin Cook, Saquon Barkley. Who else did they face earlier on? But basically, they faced a whole bunch of offenses that have been pretty good so far. On the flip side of the ball, with the Bears, I like Justin Fields' rushing upside. I might play him if it's a super flex. I do not like it in a single quarterback type of league. David Montgomery is probably the guy that I'm going to start with the most confidence, assuming a clean bill of health going into the game, and that's something that you're going to want to monitor. Darnell Mooney, I know people have kind of talked about this potentially being the game that he pops off. I'm okay missing it. I really am. I don't want to be in a situation where I have to feel like I need Darnell Mooney to pop off. So I'm going to let that slide if I can. Again, desperation. I get it. We're all in those situations, especially with bye week starting. But I would much rather find somebody other than Darnell Mooney to get out there if I can. And then outside of that, I'm okay with just about anybody else being on my bench or really being on waiver wires at this point, like a Cole Kmet. I've dropped him in a couple of leagues where I've punted tight end and picked him up as the 12th, 13th tight end in the draft. I've already gotten rid of him and moved on to guys like Hayden Hurst. So I highly, highly recommend you do the same if you have the capabilities to. Also out there, Khalil Herbert. I don't think he gets much of a start if David Montgomery's getting the start. But again, injuries are a possibility, but not much at all to like in this Chicago Chicago-Washington Thursday night kickoff. Bet the under. I did see Justin Fields rushing prop being halfway decent. That might be something you go after, but there's not really a whole lot to like in that game. Moving on to the Sunday 1:00 games, we kick off with San Francisco traveling to Atlanta. This is another one of the games that's this is the second lowest projected fantasy total in according to fantasy data. It is right in the middle of the pack in terms of Vegas's over under though at 44.5, which gives a little bit of upside there. They do have San Francisco winning by 5.5 points, which I keep liking Atlanta against the spread. I don't know how much I like them this week, but we'll see what we get as we get closer to Sunday. On the San Francisco side of the ball, you are starting Deebo Samuel. You're starting Jeff Wilson. You might start a Jimmy Garoppolo again. I do have him in a couple of leagues where, you know what, I'm not that afraid of the Atlanta defense. I think he may be a decent. Definitely a decent super flex start, and could be decent in a one quarterback league where you have some guys on bye or something like that. Like if you were one of the guys that was rolling with the Jared Goff train, maybe throwing Jimmy Garoppolo in there so you don't have to use too much of a waiver priority or too much fab or something like that if he's out there on your waiver wire. I think he could have a decent game against this Atlanta defense. Ayuk and Kittle are guys that I'm not starting with a ton of confidence. I think Kittle needs an opportunity to really blow up, and we just kind of haven't seen that yet from him. But hopefully we get there at some point soon. Atlanta, you're starting Drake London. I'm not happy starting Tyler Algier. San Francisco has a tough defense. The last time Algier was able to do well was against a weaker run defense in Cleveland. He struggled against the Tampa Bay run defense, which has been pretty tough for a couple of years now. I think it's going to be a little while before Algier really gets his opportunity to take off. He has a string of relatively difficult run defenses coming up, so I do not want to start him if I don't need to. You're hoping that he gets an opportunity to get some goal line work and get into the end zone. But I do not think you're going to get his, 80 rushing yards that you did against Cleveland anytime soon with the rush defenses that he has coming up. And Kyle Pitts is, Kyle Pitts. He should be back this week. Again, you want to keep track of that. If he's back, if he's in the lineup, you got to play him unless you have another safer option. But the upside is still there, and you have to think at some point Atlanta's going to do the right thing to be able to move forward with Pitts being more involved in the offense. But we'll see where we end up with that. I don't like it, but it is a thing that we just kind of have to keep going with. Next up, we have New England traveling to Cleveland, which is, again, another just kind of not inspiring game. One of the lower over-unders, 43, one of the lowest projected totals for fantasy. And I do see a Cooper Rush comment in there. I see you, Joe. I'm going to wait to the Dallas game to put that one up there. But yes, Cowboys. All right. New England and Cleveland. On the Cleveland side of the ball, you're starting the running backs out there. You're starting Nick Chubb. You're starting Kareem Hunt. You're probably not starting much else out there. Jacoby Brissett is not really that startable of a guy outside of Superflex. Amari Cooper is decent. David Njoku is decent. And David Peoples-Jones, I really like as kind of a DFS type of play because he has been finding the end zone here and there. The Cleveland team, I was just talking with somebody else on Twitter, is surprisingly good. They've been able to put up 20 points a game, which is honestly a lot better than I thought the Browns would be doing, especially with Brissett leading the way. But even still, I'm not that excited about a lot of these players here. Again, I think in Njoku, you can play him in the tight end position. I wouldn't start him over a guy like Pitts unless I was at a spot where I'm like, all right, I feel really comfortable that I'm going to win this game out, which I really don't feel that comfortable unless I'm in a dynasty league where I know a team is tanking. And again, Cooper, Peoples-Jones, guys that you can put in there, but not more of a flex play, not a position that you want them to be your starting wide receivers. On the opposite side of the ball, New England, there's really one guy to maybe two guys that you're definitely starting in here. Really one guy, and that's Ramondre Stevenson. You're definitely playing Stevenson is a RB, starting RB. He has the potential to be an RB1, considering the fact that he is just the main guy out there. So keep him in your lineups whenever you can. Mac Jones is projected to play. Whether or not he does, you want to keep an eye on that. And then Jacoby Myers is really your only other option of a starter there. I really don't like any of the quarterbacks here because I feel like you might get stuck holding the bag if there's a late kind of inactive there. I haven't heard anything about Mac Jones being officially ruled out yet. But we did get news that his injury wasn't as bad as it looked on the first kind of look at those pictures and videos we saw of him going to the locker room. But Jacoby Myers, really the only other option out there besides Ramondre Stevenson. He is a PPR machine. And yeah, I'm not starting Devontae Parker, Hunter Henry, Nelson Aguilar, any of those guys. I'm not rolling them out. I'm keeping them, if not on the bench, on the waiver wire. So I do not have any faith in New England outside of Stevenson and Jacoby Myers. Next up, we have the game that I'm going to go watch, which is going to be awesome. And that's the New York Jets taking on the Green Bay Packers. I'm super excited to be in Lambeau. Not a Packers fan, but just for the NFL history of Packers Stadium. And plus, I just love watching football. So Sunday, I'm going to be in Green Bay enjoying the festivities. If you're out there, hit me up. I'd love to see some of the people that I interact with on Twitter, actually in person. So if you're out there, hit me up. Traveling with some buddies to go see the New York Jets take on Green Bay. And we have some interesting ways this game can go. It's right in the middle of the pack in terms of over under at 45. And it's right kind of in the middle of the pack in terms of projected points as well. And most of those projected fantasy points are coming from the Green Bay side of the ball, which is to be expected with Aaron Rodgers being expected to be at that QB1 fringe type of play. And I feel pretty confident at starting him there against the Jets defense that has the ability to be burnt on just about any play. This is one of those types of games, though, that the Jets are a team that you never know who they might be. I really don't think they can beat Green Bay. But the Jets are one of those weird teams that, this could end up being a relatively good game. And Green Bay is one of those teams that can be beat by just about anybody. So I'm really interested to see what happens with this game. But Aaron Rodgers, I think, should score points. I think Aaron Jones should score points. I think Lazard and Dobbs are both startable guys that you can put out there. And A.J. Dillon is a decent enough flex play, especially with desperation happening with buys, which we already mentioned, and a bunch of injuries going on. Outside of that, Cobb had a phenomenal week 5. I don't necessarily see that continuing this week. I think we get back to Lazard and Dobbs being the focal points of this receiving core. So I'm going to roll those two guys out with confidence. And Tanyan, I really don't like it as an option. I know some people kind of have him out there as a tight end play. I'm not a big fan of it. I'd rather look for some other options at tight end. On the New York side of the ball, Zach Wilson is an upside play. He has all of the skill sets to be good and to throw the ball down the field. The question is, can he put it all together? It's been the same question we've been asking since his rookie year. He has been making a little bit of strides there, But the Green Bay defense they do have some playmakers on the outside. So it makes me a lot more hesitant of rolling out Zach Wilson with extreme confidence. I do like Brees Hall and even some Michael Carter love as well. I know Brees Hall had those two huge plays, and Michael Carter poached both of the touchdowns from there. I can see both of these guys kind of being more and more of a timeshare, but as long as they're both getting used, because there's not a whole lot in terms of receiving options that have been reliable so far for this Jets offense outside of like a Garrett Wilson and honestly Tyler Conklin. But since Zach Wilson has come back, Conklin has not been as profitable in your fantasy plays. So rolling out Brees Hall, rolling out Michael Carter as well. Yes, he's probably going to thrive on goal line work, but I think we are seeing the emergence of Brees Hall kind of taking over this backfield. So despite my earlier in the season hesitations with Brees Hall, we're seeing him kind of put it all together. We're seeing the Jets kind of put it together, and they have a pretty good matchup against Green Bay to see, can they start taking those next steps? And that's what we want to see moving forward. Up next, we have Jacksonville moving to Indy to play the Colts. And this is a game that I'm not excited for. This is a game that I will go back and watch with holding my nose and holding back the wretches of the game as it progresses. Probably just some die-hard degenerate betting going on in this game, which I'm here for. I'm not against it, but nobody that I really want to get that excited about. Hopefully, we have Jonathan Taylor back. The Jacksonville defense did look pretty good earlier in the season. We'll have to see what they are as the season continues building, but they invested a lot into their front seven. So I'm excited for Jonathan Taylor to be back, but I'm still hesitant to proclaim that he's going to give you a 20, 30-point game. Michael Pittman is back and rolling a little bit. I'm excited about that. And I'm excited for Alec Pierce's role to increase in this offense. I like Alec Pierce as a deep flex type of play. I like Alex Pierce in some DFS options. Matt Ryan is a option in Superflex. Definitely not rolling him out in single QB unless there is just sheer desperation out there. But I do feel like the game script is going to lead itself to the Colts passing the ball quite a bit, which means Alec Pierce and Michael Pittman should get enough work to be at least flex plays, especially in PPR leagues. In standard leagues, they definitely take quite a bit of a hit because we're just not really expecting that much touchdown potential from either of them. On the flip side of the ball in Jacksonville, Trevor Lawrence, I like him more than Matt Ryan, but I don't really like him that much as a single QB type of play unless you're, again, absolutely desperate. He's kind of in that 10 to 15 type of QB range. I expect him to finish somewhere around there. Christian Kirk, James Robinson, Travis Etienne are really the only plays that I think you get out of the Jacksonville side of the ball. Maybe a little bit of Zay Jones if he does get the PPR little boost there, if he does get hit with a bunch of targets, but it is not a play that I'm that excited for. And James Robinson, Travis Etienne, I think we're going to slowly get to what we're getting with Brees Hall and Michael Carter, where we see James Robinson poaching a lot more of the goal line work, but Travis Etienne looking a little bit more in between the 20s, as well as getting a little bit more receiving work. I think we're slowly starting to see that increase happening. Not going to spend too much more time on that game. Moving on to the injury-riddled Miami Dolphins and the Minnesota Vikings. This game is getting into a little bit more of the higher Vegas projected total at 45.5, but still relatively paltry fantasy projection at only 182 total fantasy points on both sides of the ball, which is, it's pretty low. A little bit lower than our average for the week. On the home team, Miami, you're starting Tyreek Hill, you're starting Jalen Waddle. Raheem Mostert has become pretty much a start here, especially with Chase Edmonds kind of falling off of what people thought was going to be his backfield earlier on in the preseason and offseason. The biggest issue is the person throwing the ball is probably going to be Skylar Thompson, their third string quarterback. That does hamper my expectations for Hill and Waddle. The plus side, though, with both of those guys is yes, they could walk away with 4-point games, but they could also walk away with 15, 20, 30-point games just off of screenplays, just off of quick slants, which are things that you expect even a third string quarterback to be able to complete. There is, last I checked, a little bit of hope for Teddy Bridgewater to come back in time. He needs to clear concussion protocols in order to be able to do that. So it's definitely something to keep in mind. But I'm not taking Tyreek and Waddle out of my lineups unless I have a absolutely stellar other set of wide receivers. And chances are you probably don't have that unless you're in some kind of dynasty league where you've just assembled the Avengers type level superhero squad of wide receivers. On the Minnesota side of the ball, Justin Jefferson is one of those Avenger superhero style wide receivers. He is an auto start for you. Yes, he had a really low dip for a couple of weeks, but he is coming out of that. Minnesota seems to be coming out of that. It's making Kirk Cousins one of those type of guys that you can start at the back end of your roster. He's probably a guy that you got in the back end of drafts, and that's perfectly fine. You can roll him out there. I do have more faith in him than like a Trevor Lawrence or a Matt Ryan or any of those types of guys. So again, not starting him over, a Pat Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, any of those guys. That would just be crazy. Even though Jalen Hurts is facing a pretty tough defense in the Cowboys defense, you're still going to roll him out there, but not over, you're not starting Kirk Cousins over a guy like that. Dalvin Cook, again, is an auto start. And then you get into, I would say, more DFS plays. They're not plays that I really want to roll out in any type of managed lineup league with Adam Thielen or Irv Smith, pretty much anybody else on that Vikings roster. Extreme desperation, you may roll out an Alexander Madison. You may roll out a Madison in some type of tournament type of lineup if you're counting on Dalvin Cook to deal with some of the injuries that he's dealt with over the course of time, but not really an option that you want to invest a lot of chips in, especially in a managed league type of format. Moving right along to Cincinnati and New Orleans. This is going to be a really interesting game. Both of these teams had, I would say, at least playoff aspirations, if not more. And they've seen their fair share of struggles, not only with injuries, but just play on the field. New Orleans, we're hoping to see Jameis Winston come back on the field. Again, I am excited for Jameis Winston to hopefully get to his 5,000 yard, 30 touchdown type of season that he had a couple of years ago. It's not going to happen this season just because of the injuries that he's dealing with. But I want to see him back and healthy and getting this New Orleans team really moving forward, because Andy Dalton, no offense to Andy Dalton, is not it, right? Alvin Kamara, though, we're starting him in every lineup that you have him in now that he's back and healthy. There's a lot of injury concerns in this New Orleans team. Michael Thomas is still questionable. We'll see where he's at in terms of his readiness to play. Keep an eye on it. Chris Olave left last week with a concussion after getting his touchdown. I absolutely love Chris Olave. But again, you need to make sure he clears those concussion protocols in order to be able to roll him out, because otherwise he's not going to be playing the game. Make sure he's ready to go. And outside of that, I do not like Jarvis Landry. The big question mark is Taysom Hill. I like rolling him out at the tight end position, especially if I'm in a position where I am looking for big play upside. Taysom Hill is not going to score you 30 points a week. It is not reliable to count on that. But I think what you can count on, though, is he's going to be involved in some way, shape, or form, especially with Jameis Winston still on the mend and Andy Dalton still in the backfield. I do see him getting work. I don't see him, being he was top 4 in PPR scoring, just standard your typical PPR scoring this past week. Don't expect that. Okay. But I think you can expect a week where he gets 5 to 10 points and a week where he busts out a 20-point week. You're never going to know which one of those you're going to get, which is also why I'm all right with him being in the tight end position, because there's not many other tight ends that can give you that type of upside. On the Cincinnati side of the ball, you're starting Joe Burrow, you're starting Jamar Chase, you're starting Joe Mixon. T. Higgins should be back and healthy. You're going to roll him out there. And one of my favorite plays at tight end has been Hayden Hurst, especially with Cincinnati kind of looking for a little bit of healthiness in their wide receivers. Hayden Hurst has been able to come on and do just fine in the tight end position. I like Hurst. Especially if you punted tight ends like I did. Now, to go back to the Atlanta point made earlier, I'm probably not starting Hayden Hurst over a guy like Kyle Pitts. The upside is just not there. But I would start Hayden Hurst back to the Chicago game. I'd start him over, like a Cole Kmet or anybody like that I drafted and have just been waiting to start. I'd start him over a bunch of options, especially, Jacksonville, Indy, teams we just talked about. I'd start him over all of those guys. I think he is a decent enough streaming tight end that I've been able to stream him for a couple of weeks now with him doing well enough to keep him in that position. Outside of that, there's not really much out there. Maybe a play in Tyler Boyd. You never know which one of the Cincinnati guys really go off. So in a DFS type of play, there's always an option there. Next up on the list is Baltimore Ravens traveling to the New York Giants. This is a really interesting game considering the Giants are 4-1. And I believe the Ravens are 3-2. I'd have to look that up real quick. I know the Giants won because I live in New York. But the Ravens are a really interesting play here. This game is going to be extremely interesting to see what we get out of it. The Ravens are one of the top projected teams in terms of scoring this week. The Giants not so much, because they have almost nobody in that receiving core. But who you are starting in the Giants offense, you are starting Saquon Barkley. You may start a Daniel Jones because of rushing upside. I like it more in a super flex league, obviously, just because you need to play 24 quarterbacks in that league. I'm probably not playing them in a 1 quarterback league unless, again, I am pretty desperate. As far as receivers are concerned, though, Richie James, Darius Slayton, I'm all right with throwing Darius Slayton into some DFS lineups. I'm all right with throwing him into either some over/under bets, or if you're doing pick 'em with our friends over at Underdog. I think that's a great play. If you are on Underdog, or if you haven't signed up for Underdog yet, do it. Use the promo code FACTS. We'll match your first deposit 100% up to $100. It's a great way. Pick them. You pick higher or lower than receiving yards, receptions, passing yards, rushing yards, all that good stuff. And you can also do drafts for weekly payouts. It is great. You do it for a single week. They also are starting their resurrection, which is a whole lot of fun. So if your team has died, figuratively, you can do these resurrections and do for remainder of season drafts, which are a great option. Highly recommend it. Go ahead, check out our friends over at underdog.com. Use our promo code FACTS. Get you a great time. All right. That being said, Richie James, Darius Slayton, that's basically it. You're not going to start anybody else on the Giants. On the Baltimore side of the ball, you are definitely starting Lamar Jackson. He is an auto play. You're auto playing Mark Andrews, and you're probably auto playing Rashad Bateman, and maybe not auto playing, but given the buys and injuries, you're most likely playing with J.K. Dobbins and the possibility of a Devin Duvernay in there as well. Um, Again, more like a flex play with Duvernay than anything else. I'm not thrilled to have him in a starting lineup. Bateman has had a couple of big plays already this season. And the Giants are prone to giving up big plays. So I like both Bateman and Duvernay, especially with the touchdown upside against the Giants. Moving right along to one of the most lopsided spreads of the week, and that is Tampa Bay against Pittsburgh, with a spread of 8 going towards Pittsburgh. 8 points being provided to Pittsburgh. Man, Pittsburgh has just been rough to watch. Tampa Bay is the highest projected fantasy points on fantasy data.com. You're probably going to roll out Tom Brady if you have him. Leonard Fournette has been doing phenomenal this week. Go ahead and keep him going. Run Fournette till the wheels fall off, which seems to be the same thing that Tampa Bay is doing. And Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, go ahead and keep them going. I don't see much else out there. Cade Otton was a guy that I said check out in terms of guys that you can start with Pitts out last week. And he did decent enough in terms of receptions. If it was a PPR league, he did almost 10 points, which is great for a tight end. The question mark will be whether or not Cameron Brate is playing or not. Cade Otton may be another nice play there, but definitely as a streaming tight end option, and looking at a whole lot of other guys that could be options there as well. On the Pittsburgh side of the ball, man, it is tough pickings outside of George Pickens, Deontay Johnson, Najee Harris. You're probably rolling them out there if you have them. But, man, this is an offense that's really tough to get behind. There's a lot of volume in terms of the passing game that has been kind of played around with Johnson, Pickens, a little bit to Freiermuth. But, man, it is tough to try and get any of these guys into your lineup outside of the fact that you probably drafted them in the mid rounds. Late rounds probably for Freiermuth and Pickens, but definitely early rounds for Najee, and mid rounds for Deontay Johnson. And yeah, it's tough to get them in there, but you probably roll them out, start your studs, hope they can get something going. Najee Harris is definitely a guy you need to temper expectations for. But again, you're probably going to need to roll him out, if not in a starting running back position, probably a flex position, because of Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, DeAndre Swift, Jamal Williams, and Dameon Pierce all being on bye this week, and some other injuries going around the league. But yeah, definitely nobody I'm really targeting in terms of betting or pick them in underdog or DFS plays, unless they're just absolutely phenomenally discounted. But yeah, not a whole lot to love there. Moving along to to the greatest spread of the week, and that is the Carolina Panthers traveling to play against the Los Angeles Rams. This is my underdog pick of the week. I see the Panthers being able to cover a 10-point spread here just because the Rams have just been a highly inefficient and overrated team so far this year. I told you that the Cowboys were a great play against them. Hopefully you played them. I definitely played them and won a little bit of money on my birthday weekend, which was absolutely phenomenal. But the Rams, I could definitely see them letting you down in terms of that 10-point spread. I think it was way too big, especially considering the Carolina defense has been decent. It's their offense that has just been absolutely atrocious. Expect a heavy workload for Christian McCaffrey. especially anticipating PJ Walker being the starting quarterback with Baker Mayfield dealing with a high ankle sprain. Which, does that mean anything for DJ Moore? I don't know. It's so hard to tell. I have DJ Moore in a 2 wide receiver, 1 flex league, and I'm probably not going to play him. It's going to be really difficult for me to say, yeah, I'm going to start him in my lineup here, just because, man, it is going to be tough to do. Thank you, Joe. Joe, I appreciate it. Nice little birthday money. It was a nice little birthday payout to bet against the Rams. Thank you for that. Moving right along, though. Outside of that, I'm not starting anybody. I'm not playing PJ Walker. I've picked them up in absolutely desperate super flex leagues. I've picked them up, but I'm not starting him over. If I have a wide receiver with a whole lot of upside or a running back with a whole lot of upside, I'm probably not playing PJ Walker over them, which I know is like a cardinal sin in super flex leagues, but I just don't trust him. I don't see the appeal to kind of putting him into a lineup right away. And really, that's it. That's all there is to talk about on the Panthers side of the ball, because you're not playing anybody else. Maybe you throw a Shi Smith in there. Maybe you throw a Robbie Anderson into some DFS if you're doing, 20, 30 types of lineups, stuff like that. But you're not really playing any of those types of guys. For the Rams, there's been one consistent thing in fantasy football over the past year and 5 weeks so far, and it's Cooper Kupp. If you're not auto starting Cooper Kupp, I don't know what you're doing. But please, if this is the one thing you listen to, start Cooper Kupp. I don't know how you could go wrong with fantasy advice like that. Other than that, don't start Matthew Stafford. He has been absolutely atrocious. I would start a whole lot of guys instead of Matthew Stafford. That offensive line has just given him absolutely nothing to kind of play behind. Start Tyler Higbee, because if Stafford is not throwing the ball to Kupp, he is throwing it to Tyler Higbee. Outside of that, Akers and Henderson, it has been a flip-flop back and forth. It looks like Henderson is slowly starting to take over the lead role. But again, that offensive line is giving him absolutely nothing to run behind. So I am not excited for it at all. I feel like this is a trap game for a lot of the Carolina players a lot of the Rams players, because the Carolina defense is better than what at least what I was expecting them to be. And I think better than what people are seeing them, especially with a 10-point spread out there. All right. Next up on the list, that was the first of the 4:00 games. Moving along in the 4:00 games is a game that I've heard a lot of people talking about in terms of quarterback play, and that is Arizona and Seattle. Geno Smith has been on an absolute tear lately. He has been a fantasy quarterback just godsend if you picked him up late in drafts. And I'm going to ride that wave. I'm not going to ride it over Kyler Murray, which was one of the questions that I saw on Twitter. And I wish I could remember which Twitter account that was that asked that question. I did reply to it, though. But I'm going to play Kyler Murray over Geno Smith. But I think both of them are going to be really great plays here. Lockett, Metcalf, you're going to keep rolling those guys out. And one of the running backs that I am a lot more excited to play is Kenneth Walker, the rookie for Seattle, taking over after Rashad Penny had a broken leg, which you just kind of got to sigh and pour a little beer out for Rashad Penny. It seems like it is one of these things where the dude is just cursed with injuries. But that does open the door for Kenneth Walker. We hope the best for Rashad Penny. But in terms of fantasy, Kenneth Walker, I'm starting him all day, especially against an Arizona defense that can be beat in a bunch of different ways. This is going to be one of the most interesting games. It is the second highest. Let me just double check. Yeah, second highest over under of the week at 50. And the only game topping that is the next game we're going to talk about with Buffalo and Kansas City. But I expect there to be a lot of points scored on both sides of the ball here. with Smith, with Lockett, with Metcalf, with Walker. I'm not playing really the tight ends except for Disley, and that's like hoping for a touchdown. That's basically it with Will Disley and the other tight ends there, because it's hard to pick which one of the guys it's going to be because it's been Fant, Disley, Colby Parkinson, all having touchdowns at some point this season. On the Arizona side of the ball, again, rolling out Kyler Murray. I really like it against the Seattle defense. They can be beat. I think they can be beat in both ways as well. So Kyler Murray is definitely a start for me. Marquise Brown is a start for me. Zach Ertz is a definite start for me. He was another great late tight end play. And then Rondell Moore has been a guy that I think is a solid play at the moment. It's going to be interesting to see how this receiving core really plays out with Marquise Brown, with Rondell Moore, and over the next week or two with DeAndre Hopkins coming back and Zach Ertz still being in the mix. It'll be interesting to see what happens there. In terms of running back, you need to keep an eye on James Conner. He's dealing with a little bit of injuries here and there, which makes Eno Benjamin an interesting play. I'll flex him if I need to, or because it's a 4:00 game, you'll probably flex him if you need to. But I'd throw some coin out there in terms of a DFS lineup with him, just because he may get the full start. And again, this Seattle team is a team that can be beaten on both the ground and in the air. So lots of points to be expected there. Lots and lots of points to be expected in this next game with the Buffalo Bills traveling to the Kansas City Chiefs. This is probably the most, if not the most exciting game of the regular season. It should be one of the top most exciting games of the regular season. If it lives up to anything that the playoff game was, with the back and forth, just last minute touchdowns that we saw in that playoff game between the Bills and the Chiefs, we're in for a hell of a show. It's going to be phenomenal. This is far and away the highest over-under for Vegas at 54, far and away the highest fantasy points projected at 208. You're starting Mahomes, you're starting Kelsey, you're starting Clyde Edwards-Helaire. You're probably rolling out Juju or MVS if you have them, maybe in a flex play. Not as excited about those guys, but in this type of matchup, I could see this needing to be a passing type of game. And you're hoping that Juju and MVS can take the opportunities that they're given and really run with them. You're starting all of them out there. And it's one of those types of games you may be able to throw Jerick McKinnon in there as a flex, probably more so than Isaiah Pacheco at the moment, because I really don't think you're going to get kind of that ground and pound type of thing that Pacheco has been used for so far. Outside of that, I'm not playing Hardman or anybody else like that. But in a DFS type of like tournament type of play, maybe. They're worth throwing in there considering the amount of touchdowns that are expected to be scored in this game. On the other side of the ball, you again have your auto starts: Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs. A healthy Gabe Davis is an auto start in my mind. And then you get some interesting plays there. Like, do you play a Devin Singletary? Maybe you flex them in. Again, this Kansas City team is a team that can be beat, so why not? I'm probably not playing Isaiah McKenzie without any type of injury to like a Gabe Davis or a Stephon Diggs. So again, pay attention to any type of injury news coming out, but I'm not making that play. I'm also not starting any of the tight ends there. Dawson Knox was dealing with an injury last week, which made a couple of people excited about Quentin Morris. No, not for me. I'm not playing any of those guys. I'm expecting this to be the core ballers really balling out, both quarterbacks and Allen and Mahomes, both main receiving options in Diggs and Travis Kelce, and then your other kind of flex plays with Clyde, Gabe Davis, Singletary, Juju, MVS, those types of guys working them in there. Lots of points, lots of guys that you're just going to be getting all in there. Next up, my own Cowboys in the late game against Philly. This is, again, going to be another really great game. The over-under is low, and I expect this to be part of the narrative here, and honestly, why I'm probably going to stay away from it in terms of betting, because both of these defenses have been playing out of their minds so far this season. The Cowboys defense has been absolutely phenomenal, and it's been what's keeping the Cowboys in games right now. Cooper Rush has been doing phenomenal, and now I'm going to throw up our boy Joe's comment here. Only threw for 102 yards, but no turnovers. 5-0, Mr. Cooper Rush continues to win. I love it. That's why he keeps posting here. Joe, I love it. I hope you keep coming in here. I hope we continue it. I hope it keeps going. When Dak does get back and healthy, and he said he was feeling good in practice, I don't expect this to be a quarterback controversy because Cooper Rush has been managing the game. He's been doing well, but he has not been taking over the game. He has not been putting the Cowboys offense has not been the focal point of why the Cowboys have been winning games. It has been the defense that has been leading the Cowboys to wins, and I expect that to continue, which makes me really interested to see where a lot of these projections actually end on Sunday. Where do a lot of these lines end on Sunday? Because this is a game that the under could be the smart play, and taking the Cowboys plus 6 points against Philly could be the smart play, because this could be a lower scoring game and a closer game than a lot of people are going to expect it to be because of these two defenses. With that being said, guys, you're going to be playing no matter what. Jalen Hurts, if he's not going to get it done through the air, he's going to get it done on his by way of his rushing ability. You're going to make him a player on your lineup no matter what. AJ Brown is a guy that you're going to be playing no matter what, because he's the type of guy, he could beat you with volume or he could beat you with one play. You're definitely going to have him in there. Miles Sanders is a guy that is kind of become an auto start just based on volume in this lineup. Dallas Goedert is another in a tight end depleted type of setup. Dallas Goedert is a fine play at tight end. I really like what he can offer you. Again, in tempering a little bit of expectations with the Cowboys and that their linebacking core that they have, tempering expectations a little bit, but I would be interested. I'm just excited for this game. This is a game I'm excited for. I can't hide it. Devonta Smith is another option that you can probably flex out there. And then not much else that you'd really be looking for. On the Cowboys side of the ball, you're playing CeeDee Lamb. You're probably going to play Cooper Rush if you have him in a super flex type of league. But again, this is the type of situation where I'm not going to roll out Cooper Rush in any type of fantasy. And then Zeke and Pollard are guys that are going to be really making the call of, do I have a better option in an earlier game where I can say for certain that they're going to be healthy and they're going to be good to go? I might roll with them over like a Zeke and Pollard against a tough matchup in the Eagles, and both of them kind of splitting and eating into each other's work. And then outside of that, I'm not playing Gallup or Brown. Schultz looks like he's getting healthy. I want to see him fully healthy before I roll him out into any real opportunities here. But yeah, I am excited for real football in this game. Fantasy football, I think this could be an underperforming game that we get with the Cowboys and the Eagles. And then the last game on the week, and I'm getting better, I'm almost at under 45 minutes like I try to be, is going to be the Denver Broncos traveling to the Chargers for the Monday night game. I like the Chargers all over this game. The Broncos defense has been kind of the star of the show there. And it's been good, but it hasn't been like phenomenal. I think the Chargers can overcome what the Broncos have put out there in terms of defense. And this Denver offense just seems so anemic to me. Russell Wilson has not produced anywhere close to what anybody wants him to be. Russell Wilson is a guy that it's probably going to be tough for you to sit, but I'm okay sitting if you have some other options out there, just because it's just too hard to trust him, even though this is the type of game that he should be throwing the ball to stay in. it is going to be tough to play him, even though he should be making some passes to keep up with Herbert, Eckler, Mike Williams, a healthy Keenan Allen we're hoping for finally, and Jared Everett, who are all starts on the Chargers side of the ball, all guys that you're excited to see play on that side of the ball. Not much else outside of that. On the Denver side of the ball, I don't like Wilson. I'm probably sitting him if I can. Cortland Sutton is a guy that you're probably going to start. He should be fine because he should get the majority of the volume here. Jerry Jeudy, again, you're probably going to play either Sutton or Jeudy, and that I'm okay with that. I just want to temper expectations for it. And then Melvin Gordon and Mike Boone are two guys that, yeah, they could do something. And they're probably going to be flexed only because it's a Monday night game, and also because there's a whole lot of injuries and buys in that in the running back field of fantasy. So man, oh man, not excited for this Denver team really at all. But yeah, Joe, maybe he does make a comeback. Like I said, if he's going to make a comeback, this could be the game. Maybe it's the bright lights. Maybe it's him being better on the road. But man, oh man, I don't have the trust there, right? And that's the biggest thing for me. If I'm playing him, it means that there's no other options because it's a Monday night game and I know Herbert's already owned. There's no other options at the quarterback position if I got Russ in there. And man, I'd rather not wait for that Monday miracle and go, all right, I only need Russ to put up 15 points and spend the whole game watching it go, oh my God, he's not going to get 15 points, is he? I'm just not ready for that anxiety. I'm not ready for it. But there it is, folks. There's the entire week 6 slate in the books. Make sure you give me a follow at FF the At Home Dad. Give the show a follow at the Fantasy Facts. Give Fantasy Data a follow at Fantasy NFL, Fantasy Data NFL. Give us a follow on YouTube. Like, subscribe, turn the notifications on like our good buddy Joe here. Shout out to Joe for sticking with us. Really appreciate it, Joe. And hey, if Cooper Rush plays again, let's get the 6-0 banner back in there. I'm super excited for it. But yeah, there it is. Check out our partners over at Underdog, over at Fantasy Data. Ladies and gentlemen, for all of us here, which is just me today, but everybody that helps make this show happen, I'll catch you on the flip side.